you have to also set your boundaries online. Hey, I don't want you on this dating app.
Let me just say, if you're dating someone who's actively on a dating app, might be a red flag. Just something to consider. Hi, my name is Stephanie Yates Anyabwile. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and today I'm gonna be reacting to Jubilee's video, Do All Couples Feel the Same About Cheating? Let's hop in.
I have considered breaking up with my partner. Leanna.
Somewhat agree.
Leah.
Somewhat agree.
Amber.
Disagree.
Wait, what's Charlie?
And Charlie.
Disagree.
You notice how he was surprised that she didn't say that she strongly disagreed about not breaking up, and then he changed his answer, right? He's like, okay, if you're disagreeing, me too. That's the difficulty with this video, I think, is that you see your partner's answer before you answer, so we have to kind of take all of the responses with a grain of salt. I kind of like it when everybody has to answer at the same time, and then you can really see what people are thinking.
We did break up. Our relationship was going so well on that curve up, and it was going so quick, and I felt like this is just going too well that we're just going to fall off.
I think that's so real what he said, where a relationship is soaring so high, and this happens with anything, where we are tempted to self-sabotage because the idea of getting comfortable with being happy and secure and losing it is significantly scarier than just getting rid of it right now before you're totally accustomed and secure in it yet. And a lot of times it really boils down to not trusting yourself to be able to maintain the health of the relationship. But keep in mind, if you start nitpicking now and creating conflict now, you're doing the very thing that you're afraid of. So always pay attention to whether or not you're self-sabotaging.
I'm okay with my partner watching porn. Leah.
Strongly agree.
Leanna.
Agree.
Jamal.
Strongly agree.
Nyla.
Agree.
Amber.
Strongly disagree.
And Charlie.
Strongly disagree.
She doesn't look at it on her own, but sometimes I would if I were just like home alone. You feel me? It did strengthen our communication, like, oh, if you do watch it, let's watch it together, and then we can go to sleep.
But the reason why I strongly did disagree a while back then is because I felt like, am I doing something wrong? Like, is that why you're watching it? Like, you know, am I not satisfying you? But now it's like, ooh, where'd you learn that at, you know?
When I started watching it, like, I couldn't stop. I didn't realize the effects it had on me until I met Hina. And then we discussed like our boundaries, as she was saying, like, yeah, no pornography. When I first heard that, I was like, oh, that's easy. I was so confused and I like hated myself for thinking that way. And then it just, honestly, it put me in like a deep depression because—
Yeah, it's like what Charlie was saying. It kind of, with his family, it sneaks its way in, you know?
First, I want to commend them on having a very respectful conversation. I see the conversation around pornography being very polarizing a lot of times, where people are, you know, you shouldn't be doing that or you should be doing this. And it's just not that simple. As you can see, the commonality in what everyone was sharing was really based in what they grew up seeing. But when it comes to pornography, the most important thing that I appreciate that they talked about is really some of the qualifiers for what it looks like when it's addictive behavior. So if you're in a position where you cannot stop watching pornography, if you're in a position where you can't have benign affection, physical touch without thinking about things that you've seen, those are indications that you might have an unhealthy relationship with pornography. But do I think that's the case for everyone? I do not. You know, I've seen it where it is a very okay, healthy relationship, something that helps couples with arousal. So whatever works for you, whatever feels like it is within your value system, if it's not compromising your relationship or other goals that you have in your life, you want to make a choice informed by your own values, and of course take your partner's ideas into consideration. But if you two have very competing ideals and you feel like you're having to compromise too much of yourself in order to be in this relationship, whether it's you're pretending to be okay with it when you're not, or vice versa, be very honest and recognize when you're reaching the point of having a deal breaker.
I would stay with my partner even if they cheated on me. Leanna.
Somewhat agree.
Leah.
Agree.
Jamal.
Agree.
Nyla.
Somewhat agree.
Amber.
Somewhat agree.
Charlie.
Stay with the partner if they cheated. Disagree.
Hina,
Strongly disagree.
Blake,
Strongly disagree.
Latasha.
Somewhat disagree. Yeah, I mean, I think a marriage is a contract, and I own a business. So if the other party doesn't hold up their end of the contract, I get to leave.
Go.
Bye.
It's a contract, and for us, we also believe it's a covenant as well. We became before each other between us two and a holy God. I didn't say strongly disagree because I believe there is grace, but at the same time, that is such a serious offense. I know, having been hurt before, in a relationship where someone was unfaithful, it's so painful to me, and I feel, man. And so, like, if that were to happen, and you to take the initiative to physically, like, just even the thought of that pisses me off.
Yeah, loyalty is incredibly important to the both of us.
So what's really interesting there is, as Charlie's talking, you see that he's talking about a very specific type of infidelity, right? He says for you to physically, he doesn't finish his thought, but he is thinking about a very specific type of infidelity. And that's the thing about this question, is that when we talk about cheating, there are a lot of things on the spectrum that one person would qualify as cheating that another would not. Things like flirting, and then what qualifies as flirting, right? Having cyber relationships, even for some people, just even being platonically in contact with an ex would constitute cheating. But here's the thing. Any conversation like this is going to be hypothetical, right? The context matters. You can't just say cheating, right? Because cheating is one thing. And maybe you say, hey, I would stay with my partner if they were to cheat. But what if it was like with a close friend? What if it was during a time where you were experiencing grief? What if it was something that was happening for a prolonged period in your own home, in your own bed? You just don't know. For a lot of people, those simple details make a huge difference when it comes to whether or not they're motivated to work on rebuilding the trust in the relationship. And that's the other thing, right? How motivated is your partner to rebuild that trust?
You have to also set your boundaries online. Hey, I don't want you on this dating app.
Let me just say, if you're dating someone who's actively on a dating app, might be a red flag. Just something to consider.
Older generations didn't really have to deal with.
Yeah, we did. We had Black Planet. We were getting crazy on that.
What's that?
I did not expect a Black Planet reference today.
I would like to have children. Leanna,
Strongly agree.
Leah,
Strongly agree.
Jamal,
Strongly agree.
Nyla,
Strongly agree.
Latasha,
Somewhat disagree.
Norris.
Agree.
If you would have asked me this 5 years ago before I met him, it would be strongly disagree. I don't know. I've just never felt called to be a mom. And I know that family is something that's important to him. So I think, we had a big conversation about that before we got engaged.
And I know for me, previously, it would have been strongly agree. Through our conversation, I had to really think about it, because it's like, I'm not pushing a human being out. Who am I to, just go, you having baby?
This is a really tough one, because for this couple, it may work to really be ambiguous there, but what's concerning is that they're engaged, right? So they are planning to get married, and they're still not on the same page about whether or not to have kids, because even though what they're saying is that they've been getting closer and closer to being on the same page, that's what they're saying, ultimately, one of them said agree and one of them said disagree. No matter how you reframe it, you're saying my partner really wants to have a family and I really love my partner, so I'll give them a family. The reality is you're going to have to be a very active part of that child's upbringing or children's upbringing for it doesn't stop at 18 years, It's a lifelong commitment that you're making as a sacrifice to your partner, at least at this point. Would the love within that relationship really be enough to merit that sacrifice? Most of the time, what I see is that it's not. And that is a key reason. One of the reasons that couples get divorced is actually due to infertility. And this is both partners wanting to have a child, but not being able to, and that destroying their marriage because this was a part of their lifelong vision together. For them, I'm hoping that they'll have more conversations and be on the same page by the time they get married, instead of just hoping that it all works out in the end. When it comes to children, that's one of the things that I strongly believe you need to be on the same page about.
Just to get a little personal real quick, I have been trying. So we have I'm trying not to be emotional, but we have to go through another step to conceive. It hasn't been really working out. So we just try to keep the good faith and to hope that we do have a blessing someday.
It did impact our relationship because before we even started, I told her, I said, look, if it doesn't work the first try, don't go so hard on yourself.
We just took a break altogether. Sometimes I felt us taking a break has an effect on her. She's basically seeing that I don't want to do it anymore. And that's not the case. I just feel mentally I needed to get myself together and to be strong to the point where I can look at that test, and if it does say negative, I will be okay.
And here's the thing, I'm so glad that they're talking about this, is that when you're dealing with an infertility struggle, one or both partners can develop a sense of guilt and shame around their body not functioning the way that they both hoped that it would. And I see a lot of times, that offer of, hey, if I'm not enough for you, you can be with someone else, or just seeing the dissolution of a perfectly healthy relationship because of the depression and anxiety that comes with not being able to fulfill this lifelong dream. So it is important to turn to your partner as much as you can, but also if you're both struggling, get outside support. This is when I really recommend getting individual therapy to work through and understand why you're having a difficult time. It's tempting in a situation like this to start with couples therapy because it's a couples issue. But when you notice that your own personal responses, like having depressive symptoms, like not getting out of bed, having low energy, for example, not taking care of yourself, isolating yourself, all of those things are individual expressions of depressive symptoms that could be better addressed in individual therapy. And then in couples therapy, you could focus on your why. You could focus on why you all want to have children, why it's important for you to keep going, or what are your options if this original plan doesn't work out. So if you are experiencing infertility struggles and you're noticing that you're starting to also experience issues within your relationship as you're going through that process, I'd focus on individual therapy for both of you, and if you can afford it, couples therapy as well.
I believe in soulmates. Leanna?
Somewhat agree.
Leah?
Agree.
Jamal?
Agree.
Nyla?
Somewhat agree.
Amber?
Strongly agree.
Charles?
Strongly agree.
Hina?
Somewhat agree.
Blake?
Agree.
Latasha?
Strongly agree.
And Norris?
Somewhat disagree. There's so many external factors that go into what makes a relationship. Where did you grow up? Who did you hang around? How much money you make? Where did you go to school? To say soulmate kind of leaves it up to this kind of fate, outside of myself kind of thing. I made a decision to be with Latasha, and Latasha made a decision to be with me.
I felt like this is my person.
I feel like I'm dating my best friend. Like, this is my soulmate. And then 4 years into now, we just stare at each other and be like, yeah, you're stuck with me for life. Like, we went through the worst. We got through it. We feel like we can defeat anything that comes our way.
I knew it when I knew it, and that was it. And it's hard to explain. Everybody wants to try to come up with fancy words. I just knew you were my wife. I just needed to work towards the goal of you being with me forever.
That's how it was for me too. I knew this was the woman I wanted to marry, but it was a long time before I felt like I was worthy enough for her to marry me.
I think it's interesting when they talk about soulmates, how he talks about working on himself to be worthy enough to marry his partner. Now, I don't believe that just because you're soulmates means you have to get married. And there's even been a lot of people lately coming out talking about platonic soulmates, people that you don't marry, but they're your soulmate because they see you, you feel so seen. If you are looking for that romantic soulmate, you want to know like, okay, I haven't met them yet, but how can I get the process started right now for being the best partner I could be? It's a lot of the work that you would need to do regardless of if you were in a relationship, which is identifying your personal triggers, unpacking and being honest about traumas that you've experienced, and recognizing how those things are currently impacting your relationships. Romantic relationships are not the only kind of relationships that we can review to see how well we communicate or how open we are to receiving love, to giving love, the level of intimacy and affection we're comfortable with. We can look at our relationships with our family. We can look at relationships with our friends, past relationships with lovers. Be honest with yourself. Are there patterns in the things that disrupt those relationships for you? And if so, start understanding why. Bring that up to your therapist or the person you go to for counsel and say, why is it that every time I start feeling like a person's getting really close to me, for example, that I need to establish some form of distance? You know, what are the reasons that I need that distance? So if you can start gaining more insight into your patterns and habits in all relationships, it'll get you prepared for your ideal relationship, because you'll attract someone who is looking at your growth and is looking at the health and stability that you're able to provide as a secure person because of your personal work. So that's the best thing you can do to prepare for your soulmate before you even meet them. It's so beautiful to see that no matter where these people fell on the spectrum when it came to their belief about soulmates, they were coming back around to the conversation about why they're with their partner. And so because of that, even though soulmate is really an ambiguous term that we don't have any clinical definition for what that means, I think we talk about that in terms of why are you with the person that you're with today? And if you feel confident that you're with the one person or one of the people that could make you your best version of yourself, that could make you happy, that could fulfill your life dreams, and you can contribute to fulfilling their life dreams, then to me that's close enough, right? We'll figure out what soulmate means along the way, but I love how they were able to come back to why they chose each other. What a beautiful set of conversations that they had in this video. I absolutely loved watching it and reviewing it. Thanks for watching. For more content like this from Psych Central, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you'd like more information about how to find your own therapist, be sure to check out the links below in the description box. See you next time.